Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Joyce, as we know, he's got big plans, big dreams, 33 years old, he wants to make some noise, he turned pro late, he only has a limited time before, the best of his prime is gone. And he's currently 6-0, he's got a fight scheduled in December. And there was a tweet that caught my eye, and thank you to a couple of people that sort of sent it on to me, from Sam Jones. So S-Jam Boxing, that's his manager, Sam Jones, and he's tweeted, "Let me make this very clear, Joe is ready for the big fights. This is what he is in boxing for. He wanted Gerald Washington, he didn't want to fight. Joe Hanks is now the opponent. After this, I promise you all, we want Luis Ortiz, Kownacki Breazeale. They're all getting it next year. Hashtag Team Joyce." A few commas in there would have helped. Maybe correct spelling of that. So I'm just being picky and pedantic, but we'll give that a like. We'll give that a retweet because I do like the tenor of that. Joyce is obviously a man in a hurry. He wants to go places, but I look at that and I think about what he's actually saying there, and wanting and getting could be two different things in 2019. Because they wanted Gerald Washington 2018. That would have been a fight that would have put Joyce on the map as a, fully minted contender. But Gerald Washington probably knew, one, the money wasn't going to be fantastic to fight Joyce, but also if he lost to a 6-0 prospect, well, his days as a contender, they would have been done, and he would have been relegated to, an opponent sort of status, high-level gatekeeper. And that's effectively what he would have been anyway. For this fight, it really was to test Joyce's mettle, see where he was really at. And with Washington's recent inactivity and the tenor of his most recent performances, I think a lot of people would have favoured Joyce to win this one. So I can understand why Gerald Washington has sort of dodged him here, but he may not be able to do that forever. So what they're doing in this PBC stable, these guys that are with Al Heyman, they are recycling through each other at the moment, and we're seeing this through the opponents. But what next for Joyce? Because obviously we're expecting Joe Hanks. This is going to be the opponent for December 1st on the Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder pay-per-view undercard. And that's going to be a fight that will be televised. It's going to be a fight that will get Joyce a lot of eyeballs on him. A lot of people will be seeing him for the first time live. A lot of people may have heard of him, may have seen some highlights. A lot of people are still on the fence about Joyce. Obviously very talented, he's got good amateur pedigree. We know that he won a silver medal at the most recent Olympics in Rio. But how far can Joyce go? Recently signed to Al Heyman, he's now training in the United States, he's under Abel Sanchez. And these statements from his manager, Sam Jones, who recently signed Guido Vianello. So Sam Jones is saying, we want Luis Ortiz, Kownacki Breazeale next year. I don't actually think any of those fights will happen next year. I don't think any of them will happen. That's kind of like the wish list, but much like Gerald Washington, I just don't see it. And we'll go through this, and then what I want to do is just click over to the PBC page, see some of the better opponents that, he could potentially face. But in terms of Luis Ortiz is at the stage of his career where he's rated very highly in a few sanctioning bodies. He's a dangerous opponent, but he's at the back end where he's looking for the good paydays for the, for commensurate risk. So this fight that he's got against Travis Kaufman, heavily favoured to win, and that's another similar situation to Joyce. He couldn't quite get a fight that he wanted, so he's taken one where it's not quite a stay busy, but it's sort of in that mold. Heavily favoured to win, should come through it, then on to the next thing. And if we look at the sort of stable of where things are at right now, these opponents that have been listed for Joyce for 2019 that he wants to go after, that he wants to fight, these guys are all in the gun for a title shot. I just don't see why they would be burning these guys off against each other, especially when they're all quite close to a title. So Luis Ortiz, very high in the WBC, he could end up getting a rematch with Deontay Wilder, or he could end up getting a title shot elsewhere. But his promotional status is the most interesting thing for me because he's got this fight, but we don't know where he's at. There's been some talk that he may go back to Matchroom. His manager, Jay Jimenez, has sort of mentioned that there's a potential 3-fight lucrative deal in the works. And after December 1st, Luis Ortiz, he may just go where the money is because he's at the back end of his career. He's got to think of those things. He hasn't made millions and millions and millions. Sure, he's done okay. He got $500,000 from the Wilder fight. But he won't be like, I'm so rich that I can just sort of comfortably, take whatever fights I want. And Joyce, that is high risk, potentially not high reward. So for Luis Ortiz, you've got to look at that and go, does that make sense? In terms of Adam Kownacki, he's spoken about being 1 or 2 fights away from a title. And he probably is. He's very highly rated in the WBC. He's one of these guys that's sort of been groomed for a title shot. I just don't think, and he's further along than Joyce is right now in that sort of queue, that pecking order. I just don't think that fight would happen. I could see Kownacki having a fight with the Lucas Browne next year because that seems to be a fight that would make sense in terms of Lucas Browne wants it. Lucas Browne's a knockout waiting to happen. He's a former world champion. It's going to be good for Kownacki's resume. Dominic Breazeale. I'm just not sure that the money would be there for Breazeale either. He's done what Luis Ortiz has done and effectively what Joe Joyce has done. He's taken a fight in December for December the 22nd against Carlos Negron. A fight that he is expected to win. I could see him taking a bit of punishment in that fight, but he is expected to win it. He is a big puncher and he could come through that. He's the WBC mandatory. I just can't see him taking on a bigger risk than Carlos Negron at this point because a title shot is coming his way if he waits. That still may be a year away, but I can't see him wanting to just give it away, hand it over to Joe Joyce because the money won't be there. That's not the sort of money that Dominic Breazeale will be looking for. There's a reason he was talking about Dillian Whyte, because Dillian Whyte could give him the payday that he would be looking for. The trade-off could be, well, if you lose that fight, well, that's not great, but, you still walk away with a bag of money. So I look at these opponents that have been listed and just think, yeah, some of it just appears to be wishful thinking. Luis Ortiz, he's probably not going to face Joe Joyce if the money is not there. Adam Kownacki, very close to his first title shot. He's probably not going to risk it on a dangerous opponent like Joyce. And Breazeale, he's got the WBC mandatory position. He is he is right there for a title shot. So I think we're going to see Joe Joyce facing more of the same like a Joe Hanks, because there's a risk sort of equation right now. And as we've seen, even though he's with Al Heyman, Gerald Washington, he didn't want to take that fight for December 1st. So they're not going to be able to force some of these guys to face Joe Joyce, especially if the money's not there. Remember, these guys are looking for themselves. They're after it for themselves. They're not looking to advance Joe Joyce's career and his aspirations and, meet his goals, especially because they want, their goals to be met for the money that they're after as well. So if we actually look at the PBC stable, some of the guys that Joe Joyce could potentially face in some in-house fights. So Charles Martin, I could see that fight being made. And in terms of Joyce's career, so if he gets past Hanks, he's 7-0 or so. So 2019, if you were looking to get someone like Charles Martin, a former world champion, on your resume, that's actually pretty good for a guy that's got under 10 fights. Dominic Breazeale, I just don't really see it happening. Adam Kownacki, I can't see that happening. Kownacki is being well managed until he gets a title shot. Chris Arreola, well, he's on this undercard for the Wilder and Fury fight, but I'm just not sure how much value would be there for Joyce fighting him, because he's clearly rinsed and faded. I mean, maybe they will wheel him out to get knocked out, but who knows? Gerald Washington, now this is interesting because Washington didn't want this fight, but where is he going? His best days do look like they are behind him. He's 36 years old now. He's not going to get any better, but clearly he still thinks he's a contender of note. I just don't see where Gerald Washington is going, and from some of the maneuvering, he kind of looks like he's, well down on the depth chart here. Luis Ortiz. So this is interesting because where he goes will depend on the money that is offered. Oscar Rivas. This is a guy that is looking for a big fight. He's, 24 fights in now. He's had some issues with trying to get cleared in the United States to fight because of an eye injury. But I think Rivas, that would be a great fight for Joyce. But will Oscar Rivas, who's clearly looking to navigate his way to some sort of title shot, will he be willing to? And he's facing a guy on December the 1st. This is on Adonis Stevenson's card that's 26-0, but it's, you know, a cream puff resume. So I just don't know how willing he will be to take on a Joe Joyce for what won't be good money. Joyce can only offer so much at this point in his career because he's not a huge draw. You know, at the moment, he's on the bottom of the card that will be televised. That's a good, you know, position for him to be in at this stage of his career. But he's not the one that's really pulling in all the punters. Travis Kaufman, I mean, this sort of falls into the Joe Hanks territory in some regard. A guy that's, you know, durable, a decent enough opponent, but does it really advance his career? It would just be another sort of, you know, tick-over fight in terms of he would get another halfway decent name on his resume, especially early in his career. Artis Bilka, I could see that fight happening. It really depends, you know, where is Spilker at in his career? I could see him fighting a Joe Joyce, but I think at the same time, some of that's going to come down to money as well. Izu Agono, we don't really know what Izu wants to do. He's been training back in Poland. He's going to have a fight in Poland in December. Deontay Wilder, yeah, well, sure, Joe Joyce would want that, but right now that's not on the cards. Antonio Tarver, well, I don't see that happening. I think, didn't he recently fail a drugs test? I'm not even really sure if he's active at the moment. He's been struggling to get fights anyway at heavyweight. Michael Hunter. Now, this actually could be quite a viable fight for Joe Joyce. You could ask, though, would it be too soon? Because as we saw in the Martin Bakole fight, Michael Hunter is no joke. He might have been a little bit wild in there, but, you know, he actually showed pretty decent skills. He had quite a sort of balls-to-the-wall sort of strategy going in there. He really put it on Bakole and made it tough and difficult for him. He's got a good amateur pedigree like Joyce, and I actually think that would be a really good fight. That could be something we could see in 2019. But at the same time, Michael Hunter, he's got aspirations for a title, but clearly, you know, he's been willing to put himself in there with someone who wants to fight, and I think he would back himself to beat Joe Joyce. I think it would be a similar sort of template he used against Bakole. F.A. Ajagba, I think he is the sort of next wave of top heavyweight in the PBC stable. I just can't see them rushing him along too fast because 7-0 at the moment, he's only 24. He needs some more seasoning. But in terms of, you know, other opponents, I think we've seen that they will bring in guys like Hanks, you know, to be an opponent. And I don't really think we'll see Joyce in a big fight. Maybe Washington will come on board, but it may depend on the money. But in terms of the what next, I think Joe Hanks, he's got to get him out of the way. He's got to look good. But in a way, that can also be a bit of a blessing and a curse at the same time. Simply for the fact that if he's a very dangerous opponent, you know, he's only got 6 or 7 fights on his resume. Well, you know, it's kind of high risk, low reward stuff for a lot of these other contenders who might be like, well, if I have one more loss, especially to someone who's sort of a prospect coming through, I might be done at the top level. So it's all well and good for Sam Jones to say, yeah, we want Ortiz, we want Kownacki, we want Dominic Breazeale, but it's just not realistic, is it? What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.